What are your views on the work-life balance debate?
I think it's a big lie that's being told to this new generation. And I think it stinks. We work 16 hours a day. I think that really builds character.
Karishma, this is a crock of bull.
If you want to...
Pardon my language. When MKO went public, it was $3 billion. My family owns 80%. Imagine the kind of wealth I'm making. But the employee is making a salary. He doesn't have the upside.
But I have a question for you.
No.
How many hours do you work, Karishma? And what about the 45 people who work with you?
They have work-life balance.
We could do better with the panel.
Yeah, we could get rid of Anupam. Delete such noise and such irrelevant people from my life.
And come back to Anupam.
If you see that on the tank as well, he's really rude. You know, he's like so disrespectful. Like he doesn't let you finish your thoughts.
There are a couple of companies where I actually got offered an exit, for instance, like Perfora. But
Even the top founders now want to come to Shark Tank. Earlier they were so dismissive.
Yeah.
In the first couple of years, log haste the hamare upar.
So, there's an unpopular opinion, which is that some of the deals that are made on Shark Tank don't actually get seen through.
Yeah, it comes from the truth. 90% of the time that the deals don't go through is because...
How much time do you guys spend with your investments on an average?
So as soon as people heard that a company came on Shark Tank, they would reach out to these founders and offer them, funding at better terms. We overheard a founder tell the other that let's just accept the deal and we'll figure out what to do later.
The founder matters more than the business. घोड़े की जगह jockey में invest करो.
You should be a politician.
I want to talk a little bit about all of your individual businesses.
Most people were writing obituaries about us in COVID. Last year, we reported close to 890 crores in EBITDA and 230 crores of PAT.
while we are now the third largest color cosmetics company in India, we feel that the road to the #1 position will require us to...
I think at 10,000 crores, we're not even 10% of our potential.
Wow. Well, first of all, why are Shaadi.com numbers such a state secret? We've all been researching, trying to find numbers, revenues.
Oh, you are
things.
dangerous.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'll tell you why.
Hello, sharks. I'm feeling a little stressed, swimming in the Shark Tank. Tell me, how's everybody feeling? Anupam, let's start with you. You've come with a nice big speaker of music and energy. How's everything?
Things are good. I mean, we could do better with the panel, but other than that, I'm feeling great.
Yeah, we could get rid of Anupam.
Okay, so let's get right into it. You guys are all building massive companies. Culture is something that's paramount to building anything worthwhile, and there's a lot of chatter. Vineeta and I were chatting offline, but she's not going to say anything online. She's already told me on camera.
Yeah.
But what are your views on the work-life balance debate, right? Like, what is the comment that the most recent one that came up was Zepto, where Adit said, I love work-life balance. In fact, I recommend it to all my competitors. So it's a little snarky banter going on X and all of those platforms. Anupam, this we will start with you.
Yeah, sure.
You can set the context. Please set the tone for this answer.
I think it's a big lie that's being told to this new generation. And I think it stinks because you are not ever going to... Okay, this is only for people who want to achieve something extraordinary in life. You're not going to achieve anything extraordinary in life by counting the hours that you're putting in, right? Work-life harmony, flexibility, all that I understand, right? And we have a hybrid work system where 2 days a week you can work out of home so you can take care of stuff that you need to do, but you are expected to be fully engaged even during that time. In fact, our productivity has gone up by 30% by doing this, right? Because we built systems that address issues of slacking off and things like that, right? We keep everybody very accountable on the outcomes. But simply clocking hours as a means of defining work-life balance is destroying a whole generation. I think what you need in your early years as a professional, and certainly I was shaped like that. I lived and worked in the US and we worked 16 hours a day. because we believed so much in the purpose and what we were trying to build. We never looked at our clocks, our watches, although we were on salaries. I think that really builds character, right? When you struggle, success builds ego, right? But struggles build character. And without that, it's very hard to build something grand and extraordinary in the long term. That's at an individual level. But even if you look at a macro level, perhaps both of them have something to do with each other. I feel somewhat bad for the new generation that the world or our country has not gone through a major crisis in their lifetimes. Right? And I'm not Dr. Doom here, but my point is, if you look at any generation in history, you will see that they're shaped by something big that happened in their lifetime, whether it was World War II, or whether it was the dot-com crash, or it was the Lehman Brothers crash, or whatever. There was some epic, or there was some war. I'm not hoping for wars, but there are these major world events that shape entire generations, right? And so I think that aside, I think people need to really go all in as far as what they want to achieve in the early part of their careers, when they still have the energy and the clarity in terms of what they want. Right?
Karishma,
if you want
this
a certain
is a crock of bull.
If you want,
Pardon my language.
So somebody
I
spoke about
completely
interruption and how they're disrespectful. You know where that comes from, right? Generally, people are like that.
I apologize.
दूसरों की नहीं समझते.
I apologizing for interrupting you.
I think she had a bad morning today. The energy on this, the energy in this show
looking
is
fantastic.
I apologize for. I apologize.
Did you look
for
in the mirror
interrupting.
first thing?
I
No.
apologize for interrupting. Once he's done, I will speak.
Okay.
He's right.
Yeah.
Let's wait for him to finish. He's absolutely right. Because
that's-
interrupting is rude.
That's what I believe. You look around and you'll see that, right?
Yeah.
You spoke about Adit.
Yeah.
Or many of these young founders. You think about all the guys who've built amazing companies. Forget the older guys. Let's look at Mark Zuckerberg. Or any of these guys.
Elon Musk.
Elon Musk is much older, right?
Yeah.
But we're just talking about the new generation and work-life balance, right? How many hours do you clock in, Ritesh? I mean, you don't count, but
I don't
how many hours are you putting in? Do you think?
Quite a few hours.
Like what?
What is quite a few?
I hear
No,
14
give
to
me
16
one
hours
answer,
a day.
Ritesh. That is, come on.
Right?
tell
At
me.
least 14 to 16 hours a day.
No, I
It
think
could be 18 or
hours
20.
पे नहीं जाएंगे, but I think what Anupam is saying is fair, which is saying that a lot of young people also who are building their companies, they don't count their hours. They are in it day in and day out. They're constantly thinking about work. They're constantly at it.
Yeah.
You need extraordinary effort to achieve something remarkable.
Yeah.
It's simple. It's an equation.
Hours still you've not said. Give me one figure.
No, my view is that, look,
No, it's a one.
Welcome to
It's just a
Ritesh.
number.
Welcome to
It's just a number.
एक तो आप ये समझिए कि ये डिस्कशन में कुछ तो आप मजा हैप्पीनेस रखिए इतना आप
so
मतलब
hard.
इंटेंस कर दिया आपने
I
डिस्कशन
asked somebody on his team, he said 16 hours.
16. Okay, so Ritesh works 16 hours a day.
No,
Okay.
No, let me finish. I want to talk about for a minute just on the culture. Look, I believe that both sides of the argument hold promise. First off, I believe that there is no.
Clearly, you should be a politician.
अरे
Ritesh
60
for
सेकंड
PM.
तो मुझे दीजिए
कभी तो इलेक्शन में
Ritesh
खड़े
for
हो.
हमारा नेता
Yeah.
देखिए अगर आपको कुछ बड़ा बिजनेस बनाना है तो मेहनत तो करनी पड़ती है. It's not going to happen by itself. But I also don't subscribe to this. There has to be a certain number of hours that you block for it. I think you basically say that if this is something you truly love, like the best Olympians, they become Olympians by saying that वो मेरे को करना है, and they fall in love with whatever they pursue, right?
Yeah.
So my perspective is, if you want to be the best in your trade, you pursue it. On the other hand, I think culture should not be limited to just hours discussions, right? Like it has to be, like what are the other things to be discussed? How long is a talent staying with you? Do you have talent staying with you for 7 years, 10 years, 15 years? That matters. I think that's at the end of the day, effectively a proposition that's working. Is there camaraderie among people? Do people enjoy working with each other? Like there are great institutions in India, like the top 10 India's listed companies. Those companies also work extremely hard. But the reason it works is because the people who've been there for decades.
Yeah.
They love working with each other and they're so mission oriented in what they pursue. So long story short, The short
16 hours.
no numbers. But that said, the other extreme is also not right, saying that it can be only 3 hours a day. That also doesn't work. But I also don't feel like there is a certain number of hours that you need to work hard, but you also need to have a life. I think there's a fair balance that can be pursued, but it cannot be low single digit number of hours. 2-3 hours a day mein nahi banti successful outcomes.
Okay.
So you hire guys who work for 5-6 hours a day? Your team?
Far more than a little bit more.
Everybody is behind Ritesh. You need to get him to say one thing that's not nice.
Because he's
or
saying
diplomatic.
far
That's
more than that and
important.
little more than that at the same time.
Okay, you were very
I'm loved
excitable.
the most by all the sharks. They all sort of care about me and
He's
love
the
me.
baby of the
You
tank.
were very excited and said this is bullshit. So I want to hear
So
your
basically, I think this whole discussion and argument that's going on is a, pardon my language, crock of bull. Okay. I'll give you 3 data points. 3 very specific data points. Number 1, when MKO went public, it was $3 billion. My family owns 80%. Imagine the kind of wealth I'm making. Now for the founders, set of co-founders, top management, look at the kind of money they're making. Obviously, they're going to work 20 hours a day, which is what we all do. But the employees, MKO has 10,000 employees. Today, my accountant in my finance department, he's making a salary. He doesn't have the upside of putting in that kind of hours. If he's going to put in that kind of hours, my second data point, he's going to have some serious physical and mental health issues with working that kind of hours on a very routine basis, which is what is expected very often. And I see disease, hospitals and doctors all day long. And of course, pharma companies want to get richer with people getting sicker. But I don't think that's the way we should go. So I think for founders, high stakeholders, going to make tons of money, go for it, work 24 hours a day, forever. But I think for the common man and woman, they need, I'm not saying you do 3 hours, but I think all corporate cultures have a certain number of hours that they're supposed to work. And of course, when they're deliverables, like my audit team, when there's a statutory audit and there's a quarter end, people at that time work the longer hours, but it's not on a non-stop standard number basis, right? Third thing, for God's sake, don't get married and have children. Because the next generation is suffering by non-existent parents. So by all means, if you want to achieve extraordinary things in your life, I'm the biggest advocate of that. You must try to do good for yourself, love what you do great for the country. But then don't make a little child miserable because you're never around for that kid. Because when you're working those kind of hours, and then you know the commute. So if you're working 70 hours a week and then you're commuting another 30, 40 hours a week, and then the rest of the time you have to get a little bit of sleep, what time are you going to give your little baby? Or even a spouse who chooses to be a homemaker to take care of the baby? Then just spare them the misery and the mental health issues of having an absentee parent. So I think for people where the stakes are high, yes, but for common employees, have a reasonable work limit, knowing that there'll be some blips, deliverable times, but it cannot be a constant 70-hour work week, which is what a lot of people are proposing. And there are going to be serious repercussions in mental, physical health if that happens. And, when it comes to next generation, please spare. And it's okay if we have fewer marriages and fewer kids, but do not put them through this.
No, I highly encourage, I'm a new dad, I highly encourage people to have a child. Now, of course, they should have a life and spend time with a child, but I encourage having children anyway.
शादी करने वाले के लिए हम बैठे हैं ना. But I have a question for you.
No.
How many hours a day do you work?
We got
How
to
many hours
this is
a
your
day-
interview.
How many hours do you work, Karishma?
A few.
What is it? Feel? Let's put a number on that.
More
Is
than
it,
3-4.
Is it more than? Is it less than 12 or more than 12?
It's more than 12.
There you
on
go.
most
And what
days.
about the 45 people who work with you?
They have work-life balance.
Thank you, Karishma. And I'm sure they thank you as well. And their spouses and kids thank you as well.
Every individual in the world, is my view, in the early part, for 5 years, if you don't go through a struggle, you'll never have clarity of what you really want.
But then make
Yeah.
a
If you are-
caveat that's 70
if-
hours a week for the first 5 years. Like,
Yeah.
don't make
That's what I
blanket
said,
statements.
Extraordinary early career.
Don't
That's
make
what I
blanket
said.
statements
Yeah.
that
I did
screw
not.
up
That's what you
people.
hear, Vineeta. That's the problem. Go listen to the recording. So I think that we must wish upon our people,
Okay.
right? Because that's what will give you character. And then you can choose. You want to vacation, be an influencer on the beach? That's your choice.
Yeah.
Right.
Vineeta?
Yeah, I work
4,000
very
per-
hard.
Yeah.
And you know, when Namita said absentee parent, I felt like
It hit
I
home.
hope it wasn't
I didn't
directed
mean you, but I mean that, you know, at some point the kids need the parent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's very hard? Come on.
No, I work very hard. And I like what I do. So it doesn't feel,
like work, yeah.
work. But yeah, I work 7 days a week.
How many hours?
Some and weekdays is generally 10 hours in the office. And then, of course, there's
You
something
take it
at
home.
night.
Yeah.
1 or 2 hours there. So yeah, maybe 12 hours, not 16.
So that's 12 times 5 is 60. And then you said you work on weekends as well.
I do work
So
on
about
weekends
5
as
5
well.
there. So 70-hour weeks.
Maybe not 7.
And
So
you're
there are
also the
weeks-
founder with high stakes.
Yeah. So I agree.
You'll
For
make a ton of
founders-
money when sugar goes
there is
public.
It's very clear that for founders, it's very hard to have work-life balance, and it is really a career choice, where for 10 to 20 to 30 years you're working really, really hard, and that's the only way to build because there are just so many variables. But in terms of the culture, we have 70% women who work at Sugar. And why we do say that, our culture is the 4 pillars are actually hunger, hustle, humor, and humility. And there is an expectation that the team works very hard. But what we try to make sure is that you love what you do. There is respect. There isn't toxicity where employees are measured in terms of the hours that they put in.
Yep.
But the conversation is all around the goal
Outcomes.
and the outcome. And I feel that there are phases when you, like Namita said, when you really go
spikes.
all out,
Yeah.
and especially in early years, I think because you try a lot of different things, and then at some point later you double down on something that's actually working for you, different roles like sales roles will have spikes at the end of the month. Finance roles will have spikes at the end of quarters. So it depends from team to team, but I don't think it's possible to succeed without working hard. But it's possible to work hard and still find balance, still make time for your family, and still prioritize your own mental and physical well-being. But it's a constant learning. It's been a constant learning journey for me as well. Yeah.
Okay.
It's work-life harmony,
Yeah.
not balance.
Let's talk about how your investments have been so far. Who wants to take it first? What about Namita? Let's go with you.
I think the typical rule is always pray and pray.
Okay.
Where about 1/3 of your investments will help you recover your principal and a bit more. So I can speak for myself. That's how it's been. And it's been a surprising set of investments, like something that a lot of people consider CSR or charity investing in Karigars has done really well. A couple of pitches where I was a solo investor and people said, this is a horrible business model, kabhi nahi chalega, like Wobble
Yeah.
has got 5x the valuation already that I gave on the tank. So very interesting to see some of the bets that were contrarian playing off. And some of the bets that I took did not play off. And when I really look at the ones that didn't work out, what was a common factor? It's always the founders. Like there's something, the business per se was good, but there was always an execution miss where the founders were concerned. So I think personally for me, I'm able to see the patterns a bit better.
Okay.
And hopefully that'll help me in the future seasons make a bit more money.
Yeah. What about you, Ritesh?
So, is Hindi and English?
Yeah,
okay?
yeah,
हाँ.
yeah.
तो इस साल जब मैं देखता हूँ जिन स्टार्टअप से मैंने इन्वेस्ट किया है, ऑफ कोर्स उनके नाम नहीं बताऊंगा, लेट देम कम आउट एज द शो कम्स आउट, बट 3 इंटरेस्टिंग फैक्टर्स आई हैव सीन. सबसे पहला आई एम सीइंग अ लॉट ऑफ यंग कपल्स स्टार्ट बिजनेसेस टुगेदर फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम. बहुत फैसिनेटिंग है. They may be dating when they start their business together, they're just married, but incredible businesses. Second, of course, I'm seeing a lot of campus startups, and that's probably I'm just coming out of yesterday, Usle, it's top of my mind because we shot some of them. And the third, what I find is that this year, the average, the breadth of companies, especially companies with high valuations and high sizes, increased in the tank. And मुझे लगता है थोड़ा बहुत it's a representation of India where you're seeing not just new age startups, new tech companies, but you also see companies which are what is called as small and medium businesses.
Yeah.
यानी कि business has been around for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, but are backbone of our country. So these three unique things I've seen this year, which I have invested in, I hope to as well. Last year I did 24 investments and in all similar kind of categories. And I think I'm happy that a lot of them have played out very well.
So what's the definition of played out well?
Look, played out well is that when you make the investment, Anuj and my team who writes the basic 2-pager memo before the final deal is signed, you set some certain expectations, right? You say एक साल में business का क्या result होना चाहिए, क्या outcome होना चाहिए. उससे बहुत ज़्यादा बेहतर हो गया. Like Dil Foods, which we did, probably a lot of us did together. Kurashia, which I did. First Bud Organics, which I did. Alter, I think I did. Yeah, I think I did it myself.
No.
We did it
मेरे
together.
पैसे भी लगे.
हाँ, साथ किया हमने. Sorry. मैंने और अनुपम ने वो साथ किया. So I think all these companies, I think that have done better than what I had expected a year back. There's some that have done just all right. But I think I can't look at any company and say that did not do well at all. There was one campus startup where the founder basically wound out their business, but he's now starting something new, which we're trying to partner with him in something else. So I think very happy about the last year, but going in this year with even more excitement.
Yeah, because you've learned from whatever
Yeah,
it is.
I think between last year and this year, what's changed is पिछले साल businesses की depth में काफी जाते थे, but I have seen what are the things that have done the best for me.
Correct.
So I have tried to replicate and search for those kind of entrepreneurs in like a pattern matching again this year.
Yeah. Okay.
What is
Being
that pattern?
contrarian.
He's like, tell me also.
नहीं, मुझे 3-4 चीजें, right? Like the first thing that Namita also mentioned is that the founder matters more than the business. A lot of time businesses may have a lot of promise, industry बड़ी अच्छी होती है. Founder, if they are like really rock star, then even if the industry or business has some issues, it's fine.
Jockey घोड़ा.
Yeah.
देखो विनीता तो मतलब एकदम लाइन याद रखती है कि घोड़े की जगह जॉकी में इन्वेस्ट करो तो आगे बढ़ोगे. I think that's one. But the second is also just nuances, right? Every business has their own nuances. And hence जितना detail में आप जाएं, for example, one of the areas I've been very focused on this year in the discussions has been market benchmarking. Ki who are the other players?
Correct.
What are they doing well? To see whether the founders are getting that context as much or not. But the biggest is jockey and
Jockey.
घोड़े. Jockey पे पैसे लगाने चाहिए.
So how have your jockeys performed?
So I think I find it very difficult at this stage to give a direct comment because there's a contradiction. On one hand, as an angel investor in an early stage business, you don't want to do an exit for like at least 10 years because that's where you really maximize. So there are a couple of companies where I actually got offered an exit, for instance, like Perfora. And it just didn't make sense to do an exit right now because the company is probably at 3 to 4 times what we invested, but there's so much more potential. And these things play out over like a decade, 2 decades. And I've seen it in my own brand journey because most of the companies I've invested in are brands. So brands take 10, 20 years to really go to their full potential. And if something's doing well, you don't want to pull it out.
Correct.
But on the other hand, as an angel investor, your real outcome comes from whatever your exits are going to be, right? Like at the end of the day, you can feel happy that I invested X and now the value of that is say, 1.5 times X, my entire Shark Tank corpus. But that doesn't really matter because liquidity events in India are not as frequent.
Yeah.
So I think I don't want to jinx it by saying anything. I'll just say that, that entire normal curve is playing out. There are 3-4 of my investments that have not done well. Some of them have shut down as well over the last 4 years. There are about 15-20 of them that are now sitting at maybe 4 to 10 times of the value at which I invested. But I've not taken any exit yet. So
Correct.
I don't know what will happen the day I actually exit. And then there are the ones in between. But I think what I'm feeling very happy about is that when Shark Tank India season 1 happened, it was the peak of the entire investment venture capital bubble, where the valuations were very high. And a lot of us invested at that time in companies that were really just focusing on growth, doing a lot of performance marketing, but a lot of them have braved the storm of 2023-24 where funding's really dried up. They're figuring out survival on their own. They've turned profitable. They've really managed to bring their performance marketing from 30-40% to 10-12%.
Yeah.
And I think that I feel really happy about, because outcomes in terms of exits you can't predict.
Correct.
But high quality, profitable businesses are always really fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Anupam, you
Yeah,
agree?
look, I know this game, so all my companies are doing really, really well. So these guys are still learning.
I think 4 seasons mein humility ka edge.
Yeah, jokes apart. Yeah, let me take you back a little bit, because context is very important. When we first started, at least in my mind, I felt कि चलो यहाँ पर if we make back what we put in, one company maybe will succeed, then that's a good enough outcome, because this is not really about making money. I didn't really expect very coveted startups to show up on the show, right? Because that's not typically how those companies raise capital. You have the IIT grads and the IIM grads, and there's a whole VC ecosystem that finds them and funds them. And that's kind of what happened. The companies that we see on Shark Tank, at least from a qualitative standpoint, are, as he was saying, couples.
Yeah.
Or familypreneurs. Most of the people started their business because of COVID. So they said, what are we doing with our time and life? Let's start a business, right? Mom and daughter-in-law starting a business. So very uncharacteristically funded businesses, which generally don't get funded outside. And so when you look at these type of businesses, and these are the same people who were probably reading the papers in 2020 and 2021 and saying, what have we done wrong in life? Everybody's raising money at multi-billion-dollar valuation. Koi 500 million ka round ho raha hai, 200, even we run a business. Why can't we? And then Shark Tank was introduced to them. And, they said, good, here, let's go in and see what we can do. And I'm amazed that some of these companies now, at least 5 companies in my portfolio of Shark Tank companies, are over 50 crores in annual revenue run rate.
Wow.
Right. It is just remarkable. I'll give you one example that is not doing those type of numbers, but there's a company called Sharma Ji Ka Aata. It's about 18 months old. Mom and son gone through some terrible times, right? They were just financially completely. They basically वो चक्की चलाते थे, लोगों के गेहूं लेके आटा पीस के देते थे, तो 1 लाख का रेवेन्यू था. They are now doing about 60 lakhs of revenue per month in 18 months flat.
Wow.
Life changing.
Yeah.
You meet that family, and for them it's been transformational. वो Shark Tank की पूजा करते हैं, right? So from that standpoint, if you ask me how are your companies doing or how are your investments doing, I could not have expected a better outcome. Now, if you ask me money on money, वो पता नहीं यार, we'll see. That can take 5 years, that can take 10 years. Nobody can time that. It depends on economic cycles. It depends on whether you have staying power to ride through it all or you want to get out soon. Right? So that's not really my gauge for how well my investments are doing.
Correct.
For me, it's more of impact. And I don't think there's been a bigger catalyst for non-Ivy League startup founders in India than Shark Tank India.
100%. Right. Yeah, it's a leveler, basically.
Right. And now because of that, you're seeing, in the last 2 years, we've noticed, particularly this year, even the top founders now want to come to Shark Tank. Earlier, they were so dismissive. In the first couple of years, log haste the hamare upar. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
And now they all are queuing up because they see the impact it's having.
Yeah.
So I think that's very powerful.
Yeah, I think to add to that, if you look at globally, one of the metrics that you can starkly compare is less than 2% of the global capital goes to women-led companies. And if you look at most of our investments, more than 45% of what capital we've invested in Shark Tank has gone to companies which at least have a one-woman founder.
Is that consciously though?
It's just happening because 40-45% of the pitches coming in have at least a woman founder.
Correct. Okay.
So even if you are, sort of just playing by the same odds, you end up investing, and some of us are trying to put in the effort to do more, over-index on that. Now, it's a big contrast. So I think the success, if for a venture capitalist something like 15 to 20% or maybe 25% IRR. In Shark Tank context, even a 10 to 15% IRR would be great, because it's really unlocking something that was unprecedented in any other venture capital ecosystem in the world.
Yeah.
No, but I think it'll surprise us. My expectations have changed.
Yeah.
I think all our IRRs will do far better than what we are thinking.
No, I agree with Anupam.
You know, a
here.
couple of companies are going to break through. We're already seeing signs of that.
Yeah.
And they'll figure it out, right? And remember one thing, Shark Tank is over-indexed on brand businesses.
Yeah.
Because they are easily demonstratable, right? On television, explaining a SaaS business is really hard for the audiences to grasp.
Correct.
So you see a lot of brand businesses. So for some reason, and for right reasons, I think, women lend themselves better to building these type of businesses. They seem to gravitate towards them. Inko hi dekh lo, fake engineer brand bana rahi hai. So I think, and they're so good at it that many of them are going to surprise the hell out of us.
Yeah, because in terms of consumption, for most households, it's been driven by women.
Okay.
And I think it's time's up for women consuming products
especially
created by men in boardrooms, where they're looking at data and creating a product. I think products are created also with your personal pain and really having that passion for the category.
Yeah.
And so high time women sort of roll up our sleeves and build products for ourselves rather than have PowerPoint, Excel-led products being thrown at us in stores.
Yeah.
See, the commercial logic of the IRR, I actually agree with Anupam that the returns that you'd see eventually in the next 5 years, look, we're all entrepreneurs, so I'm an optimist by design.
Yeah.
I believe that the IRRs will far surprise us. Of course, you have to you have to be prepared for the worst case also. But I genuinely believe that the curve in which these companies are evolving, like when I saw founders which I invested in a year back versus I meet them every quarter, every time they come and see me, they're like entirely different people. Their vision is different. Their aspirations are different. And specifically on the women entrepreneurs, I find their commercial suave, like their ability to have control on their numbers, unparalleled. कि month के पहले cash कितना था, महीने के end में कितना, ऐसा नहीं कि बाकी लोगों में नहीं होता, but उनकी commercial abilities, I found like a spike. Now, of course, Vineeta said about brand already, so that's why I thought I'll just compliment on top of it with the financial suave.
Yeah. What do you think, Namita?
I'm a big believer, whether it's a man or a woman, your numbers have to speak.
Yeah.
So I bet 90% of the companies I bet on are companies where I want to make money. 10% I do bet on companies like a Pabi Ben or a few others where I know that I may not make money, but it's just a nice, inspiring story to give to India.
Correct.
And people like us should back such entrepreneurs. But I'm very clear that 90% have to make money. If that ends up being a woman with some fantastic numbers, I get super excited.
Yeah.
And the good thing is a lot of them have ended up being women. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. It's a win-win.
Yeah, it's a win-win.
Okay. So, there's a unpopular opinion, which is that some of the deals that are made on Shark Tank don't actually get seen through. Where does that come from? And what is your perspective or side of things? We can begin with.
Yeah, it comes from the truth.
Yeah.
There's a good percentage of companies that don't get funded. And, I've looked at the companies over the last 3-4 seasons and the reasons for them not going through. And 90% of the time that the deals don't go through is because the founder has backed off or wants to change the term of the deal.
Okay.
Right. For me, that's a big no-no. It's not because I can't change the term. Chalo, 5-10% one doesn't even think about. But if you fundamentally want to alter the terms of the deal, then it's a very bad precedent to set, right? Because that message is not hidden. Everybody knows everything. So eventually, founders, what do they hear? Go on Shark Tank and accept anything, and then later I can always renegotiate.
Correct.
Right. And so that's been one big issue. There's a problem with the ecosystem as well. I'm not going to blame the founders for this. Particularly, this was happening in 21-22. Especially when funding was, everybody had a lot of capital to throw around, and there were a lot of micro VCs and a lot of angel investors, and every professional who had a job also wanted to become an angel investor. So as soon as people heard that a company came on Shark Tank, they would reach out to these founders and offer them, funding at better terms.
Yeah.
Right. And so by the time we completed the deal, founders came back and said, but look, I'm getting a deal at much, much better terms. So you need to up the game now. And, I tend to back away from that.
It's like comparing term sheets, effectively.
Basically, term sheet shopping. But in most cases, what has happened is those deals never went through. Because, when you first see it, you get this FOMO that you want to be part of this deal. You watch it on TV. But eventually you get buyer's remorse. And when you realize the shark's not coming in, you back off. And so we've had many instances where founders have come back after us, them declining us after 6-8 months and saying, let's do the deal now, right? At the same terms. And obviously at that point, it doesn't make, from my perspective at least, I don't sort of move forward with that. Sometimes deals don't go through because of diligence. The numbers you tell us here are significantly different from the numbers that come out. And I'm not saying they're lying, although there is that as well occasionally. But most of them, because of nervousness, because of selling, because of exaggeration, whatever it might be, they say some numbers and then we find they're 30-40% less in actual diligence. I think we all look past 5-10%.
Correct.
But once it goes beyond that, it's a big matter of concern.
Right.
Yeah, I think the point about renegotiating terms, just for context, all of us have raised capital, and typically for a term sheet, which is the equivalent of the check that we give in the tank, for a term sheet to come in from an angel investor or a venture capitalist, it's like multiple meetings over probably 4 to 6 weeks in most cases. There may be some exceptions there. Now, that entire 4 to 6 weeks is getting condensed to under an hour when the decision is getting made. So we are also operating under a very tight timeline. At that point, we have to go in or out, right? So we compensate that extra risk that we're carrying because we've not been able to look at like the reviews, speak to consumers, do some of the basic work that as an investor we'd otherwise do by making the deal sweeter. So a deal on Shark Tank will probably be not as founder friendly in terms of valuation as they would get outside because of the fact that we're compensating for the time crunch at that moment.
Of course.
Which is why it's even more important that founders respect that deal because that decision was made in the context of Shark Tank and it's never going to be the same as somebody taking 6 weeks to give a term sheet.
Yeah.
And you can't like shop the Shark Tank deal outside because that really changes the spirit of the tank.
Of course, there are too many plus points when you come.
And the other thing is, I think there's a conscious effort being made now on the diligence side where companies would come in and probably be off in their numbers by 30-40%, or there would be tax issues, or like paperwork would not add up. I think there's a lot of work being done in season 4 where before they come on the tank, there is certain level of diligence that's already done. So we're expecting that season 4 we'll see a much better conversion rate because at least there shouldn't be as many surprises post diligence as we experienced in seasons 1, 2, and 3.
Basically, she's saying we'll end up spending more money than we thought we will.
Because it'll actually go through.
Exactly.
What about
My
you?
perspective is that first off, every shark at the tank, when we're doing a deal, we're doing it with an intention of wanting to close the deal. Because we put significant amount of time and effort in learning from the entrepreneur and understanding their business. And after that, significant number of days and hours are spent. I see everybody's team sort of tracking down the businesses, following up with the entrepreneurs. Sab hota hai. I'll tell you, last year I did a sum total of 24 deals. High level numbers jo mujhe yaad hai. We've closed or almost closed 17 deals.
Okay.
One deal is where there has been some diligence issues which we're trying to iron out with the company. But 6 deals the founders backed out, just validating what Anupam mentioned. Now, I wish all 6 the very best. I would never name them because all of them are doing exceedingly well. And, their only ask to me is that we want to make sure that in all of our captable, etc., we want to share that you offered the deal because they all have changed the valuation to 2x or 3x. They did very well. Credit to them. So, I have done events with them. I have given them place at our hotels for location. I have supported them in talent, but basically no ownership. But that's besides the point. The point here is to say that I want to make sure through Humans of Bombay and other programs to reiterate that a founder watching this and wanting to get the opportunity to come to the tank, you should know that to the extent you are serious about getting a deal done.
Yeah.
You have a group of hungry deal makers, assuming your business is all right, who are wanting to come in and make the deal happen. Now, you tell what your business is about. be upfront about what's good and what's not. And then we are here to cut a deal and make your business successful. And if at the end of the day, that's a business that becomes very successful, we both share the fruits of it. But if the business shuts down, we both take the pain of it.
Yeah.
That's what this is about.
I'm not as generous, and neither do I have that much time. So if you don't take the money from me and close the deal, I have no time for you.
Yeah.
So
Well,
if you,
that's the
if-
beauty
So
of
that's-
Shark Tank.
yeah.
You
so you
see
should
all
go
the
to Ritesh.
sharks.
All my companies that didn't take money from me, Ritesh will help you and his team will
No,
help you.
actually, to be very honest, I
But
I think
do
you already
finish
know that.
myself.
no. But I do admire
Yeah.
his thinking. Very often, firstly, I used to get, a little surprised when he would say all these things. It was almost too good to be true.
Yeah.
I'm like, does he really mean this? Right?
Yeah.
And then now I've known him for a long time. And it's really nice to know that he means it.
Yeah.
And it's so refreshing
But
to
I
see
don't
that.
want to encourage that behavior, right? Like
Yeah.
there is a company which I invested
But at the
in.
same time, he goes out of his way to help people, even if the deal doesn't go through. And I think to that extent, that is a bit of the spirit of the show, right? To me, it's very simple. If somebody is playing games with me and lying because their due diligence didn't match what they said at the tank, I don't want to be a part of their journey.
Yeah.
Because I'm very clear that I just delete such noise and such irrelevant people from my life, right?
Just send to Ritesh's email address. He'll
So
attend
my
that.
boy, he has a problem of interrupting. So maybe you finish talking to him. And we can
No. We will talk to you and come back to Anupam.
If you see him on the tank as well, he's really rude. He's like so disrespectful. Like he doesn't let you finish your thought or your offer. He's very disrespectful. So if he interrupts one more time, I think we just direct all the questions to him. That will make the show a lot more seamless for the
Or you
watchers.
can throw the coffee.
And
Yeah.
a lot more
Either
watching.
way,
Or we'll just,
Too
we'll
much
just
effort.
focus on this frame.
So coming back to this point, I think, where was I? Yeah, to me, that sense of values and ethics is very important. I mean, that's over and above the money you make.
Correct.
So I can make a lot of money with such people and they may be highly successful. But I mean, if they've lied and gone back on their word, I don't want to be a part of their team. I'm very clear about that. But at the same time, I'm also clear that, sometimes they ask us, do you want to air that episode? Should we because they went back on their word, let's not air the episode. And I'm like, no, because to me, to a large extent, Shark Tank is not just a business show. It's educating India,
Yeah.
right? So you're storytellers. We're not just investors. We're storytellers. So this season, I've brought a lot of stories about successful ventures, successful founders who are my friends. And I think they're mini case studies and stories that India will learn from, something to be proud about.
Yeah.
So if that founder story is going to inspire people and teach them something, go for it.
Yeah.
There's no reason not to air them.
Yeah. Holistically, it just makes
Yeah,
more
it's
sense.
a good thing. We're teaching Indians a lot about business concepts through fun stories. And if that founder is able to do that, wonderful.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be a part of their journey, that's for sure.
But this has been a little surprising to me. One of the things is that when I came to the tank first time, I came only last year.
Yeah.
So for me, the assumption was that every company that came here was primarily looking for capital only and then everything else. And it's been a little bit of a revelation for me that it is not just that. I think people are looking for the recognition and the reach equal or sometimes more than the capital.
Yeah.
And I'm still sort of processing that because when I started and a lot of you when you started, capital was not available so easily, right, out there. So like my first round was 30 lakh rupees or 1.8 crore valuation. Anupam, you'd know some of these people from
Insanity.
Mumbai Angels and
Yeah.
and
How
so
many
on,
years
right?
back was this?
This was 10 years
10
ago.
years
The
back.
sharks of Bombay.
The
Yeah.
sharks
Sharks
Like
of Bombay.
humans of Bombay, we have sharks of Bombay.
He knows all of them.
Yeah.
And
Crazy
he
numbers.
he knows how tough it, we had to go through a diligence. Out of 30 lakhs, I spent 5, the diligence also you have to pay for.
Yeah.
So out of 30 lakhs, 5 lakhs went on diligence costs.
That's
So
right.
money came to my account, 24.5 lakhs.
Yeah.
That came from multiple angels. 2 installments that too, 2 tranche. So basically I was collecting per person 60,000 rupee checks
Oh my God.
and sending acknowledgement updates of it.
Yeah.
So for me, from what I had seen to what I see the world, which is a great change, but I'm still digesting that the world is so different where the requirement for capital is actually far lower than everything else comes up. But I'm hoping that we will get more entrepreneurs who are here as much or more for capital as everything else.
Actually, that's probably not going to happen anytime soon because just to give you an example, season 3, one of our deals, Arata, and then there's another deal of mine, Adil Kadri. Just to give you an example, like we always say as startups that there is no silver bullet. Nothing is going to come and magically turn your business around because, entrepreneurship is tough. Right?
Very tough, yeah.
But it is really the way Shark Tank season 3 played out for a couple of these companies like Arata and Adil Kadri. It is more than a silver bullet. Even without the capital that we put in, the traction they got after the show aired has managed to propel them in such a way that Adil Kadri repaid a 6 crore debt, Arata repaid a 4 crore debt, and they've managed to turn around from loss-making to profitability. They grow their numbers 4 to 5 times. Now, all of that in 10 months is otherwise impossible to accomplish, but because of the platform that Shark Tank gave them, and some things worked out for them, of course, that kind of traction every company doesn't get. But this silver bullet is really actually a lot more powerful sometimes than capital as well.
But is it a double-edged sword, right? Like, do you guys sometimes feel like they're not here to actually make a deal? And there's a vested interest that I'm going to pitch it really well, and then just walk away because my sales are anyways going to go through the roof.
Double-edged sword to hai sahi, but the two companies, and I have only watched them on the tank.
Yeah.
I actually don't watch my episode. I have a little trouble watching myself on TV, so I watch everybody else's.
Yeah.
So both Adil Kadri as well as Arata, they needed capital. दोनों को पैसों की जरूरत थी.
Yeah.
And on top of that, the tank did very well for them. I have actually no problem with, or I actually believe that that's a perfect example that they need capital, और capital के साथ tank उन्हें बहुत reach दे. But that said, अगर जो दूसरा चीज आप बता रहे हैं कि if there's somebody here not for the deal, I think that's a pretty challenging situation. You want more and more people who are here for the deal, and sure, the tank should do its magic for them. Why not?
Yeah. Anupam, has it happened to you?
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people, there's a difference between clever and too clever, right? So I think coming to the tank is clever, but sometimes founders try to be way too clever and they come with a full plan, right? If it happens later because of other reasons, it's understandable. But when you come for a full plan to sort of take a deal at any term possible because that's guarantees that you'll get aired, and then we'll figure it out. In fact, it's happened already on the tank where we've overheard a founder tell the other that let's just accept the deal and we'll figure out what to do later. So it's actually happened.
Yeah.
And so I think that shows a lack of integrity. And the worst part about it is we have limited time, right? So we shoot whatever, the whole shooting is for 28, 30 days, maybe 150 pitches. So every pitch is so valuable. I don't know what exactly the ratio is, but there are hundreds of thousands of applications for these 150 spots. So when you do this, you've actually taken away the spot of somebody who is perhaps a lot more deserving and could go on to create something epic, who deserves our money a lot more than you do.
And needs it.
Needs it, exactly. And our mentorship.
Yeah.
So I think that's the worst part of it. But look, that's going to happen. That's a reflection of the real world, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to get all sorts, and our job is to try to filter that out. Hopefully, with time, we can reduce that because these founders and these companies see the real impact of Shark Tank being televised and the sharks themselves adding tremendous value on the journey. And now everybody's so social media savvy that they keep posting, about how sharks have added so much value in their companies.
Yeah.
And so hopefully it'll, reduce this occurrence, but I don't think it'll go away, which is fine.
And you know what the irony is? Like the showrunner Bimal was telling us that the data actually is that if you got offered a deal, irrespective of whether you accept it or not, your probability of getting aired is actually similar. So they don't need to do this. They don't need to accept an offer in the tank, which they don't have intention to follow through with.
Yeah.
It's just some rumors floating around outside that make them believe that if I want to be aired, deal le lo kuch bhi ho jaye, and then the negotiation is not real.
Correct.
Because you really get out of it feeling that wow, okay, this is a good deal, it makes sense, and then it doesn't go through.
So quick follow-up question here. How much time do you guys spend with your investments on an average?
We just went public in July.
Yeah.
If you consider all MCure, the company that went public as well as the non-public companies put together, we're a 10,000 crore group.
Yeah.
And the family is extremely hands-on.
Hmm.
So I would say it's on weekends.
Yeah.
I have a good team running it. On weekends is when I would get on a Zoom call, or if a founder is visiting Pune, or if I'm in a certain city, I would catch up with founders, because we love listening to their stories, being mentors, coaches. But anything more than that is probably not practical, given that our priority
Is the main
running
business.
our company,
Yeah.
which at this scale is tremendously complex and
100%.
time consuming.
Yeah. What about you, Ritesh? How much time?
So we do it 3 ways, right? The first is like, as you can imagine, with close to 20 companies or whereabouts last year, what I've done is I've set up a family office team who's actively engaged on the everyday paperwork and documentation, so that I can spend time on the strategy, business, customer acquisition, areas like those. Every few months, I arrange what I call is like a 2-day speed dating program, where we have like a 2-hour slot with every company, and we go back to back with their business updates, what they've been doing, challenges, opportunities, and so on. Because I believe that cadence, like I'm an operator, like somebody who operates business in a very high execution format. So I feel if there is no rhythm or no cadence to your tracking, it's like things can go off track very easily. So that's the second thing I do. And the third is, look, there is also a significant opportunity. Our platform at OYO is able to help these companies. So we have a small team of people who do their jobs, but along with that, they also actively get connected with companies. If there are companies which get access to our real estate or our digital platform or one of those, and they are actively engaged. So combination of 3 things: family office team for the everyday work, add to speed dating beyond, of course, phone calls, WhatsApps, meetings, and so on.
Yeah.
And the last is our internal group.
Okay.
I've myself had so many investors on board that I know what it's like to be a founder. And so that's why I like to keep it very founder-led, because there are investors sometimes who can be too intrusive and like just trying to take the business in a direction which you don't want to go. And as a founder, you don't appreciate it.
Yeah.
But then there are investors who just let you be. And whenever you need help, they're available for you. Whenever you need them to open doors, they're there for you. That's what I prefer to do. So it's more founder-led. If a founder needs help, any guidance wherever they are stuck or there's a cash issue, then there to help them. But otherwise, I don't even ask for updates. Many of them actively send it across. Many of them are come and meet once a quarter or once in 6 months, and I make time for that.
Okay.
Yeah, look, very quickly you figure out which companies will maybe make you money and which companies won't. So wherever I feel like I'm going to make a lot of money, I give them all the time that they want. Otherwise, I don't. No, so look, we have 3 buckets that we divide companies in.
Yeah.
One is closely watched companies. One is regularly watched companies. And one is don't watch companies, right? So you can figure out sometimes that these were wrong investments, or these founders simply have chosen a path that's not going to lead anywhere. So that's best not to spend time on that, right? Because it's a lot of investment otherwise. The other 2 buckets, we have a team that talks to them regularly. And again, it is somewhat founder-led, so we don't intrusively talk to them, but we try to maintain touch at least once a quarter, if not once a month. The closely watched companies is more like once a month, but the regularly watched companies is once a quarter.
Okay.
Right? And a lot of it happens depending on the stage of the company. Like I already gave you the example of Sharma Ji Card.
Yeah.
Now that has been really, really hands-on, getting them on every QC platform, literally every week involvement since we invested.
Yeah.
Right. Then there are other companies, frankly, which I haven't spoken to in 6 months because they don't need it.
Right.
Right. So I think it's on a case-to-case basis.
But do you see a difference between watching versus not watching having an impact on the outcome? Because I just feel that, from my own journey, whether somebody watched me or not, I'm building the business. So
yeah, in rare cases, what I've found is it creates some level of accountability.
Okay.
So there are different types of personalities, right? I just feel like some founders need that constant pushing and challenging. And so they do better in that environment. If nobody's looking, they just get complacent. Right?
And I just feel like, as I have spoken to founders, right, we gave them significant leverage from our family office, from our company. But invariably, they come back to saying that I need more one-on-one time with you. So I have sort of figured that if that's what they want, I'll optimize to enable that. So that's a founder first perspective. But in my own journey, Vineeta, I look back and I think you will relate with it. The early days, like the first proper board meeting, where you have to go and report numbers. For the first time, you ask yourself, gosh, like I was not looking at the 6 metrics that mattered.
Yeah.
And it's a very important reflection. So my perspective is like Anupam was saying, that accountability helps, because for the first time you ask, like I've always felt that more than the board meeting, the preparation of the board meeting has helped me, because I ask myself more questions, otherwise I may not have asked.
Correct.
Yeah,
So-
not everybody's gone to IIT like you.
That's true.
No, but also a
But
couple
the
of
non-IIT
things-
founders are doing the best, irrespective of who invested in
I
them.
agree.
Yeah.
Couple of things also is an
No, college itself is also fine.
The youngest billionaire has come from no dropout. So
I mean, more generally.
there are enough case studies within the sharks
Yeah.
that there's no formula for success.
Yeah.
But anyway, what I was going to say about the founders is, with me, one interesting thing I've seen is, in addition to brainstorming and just using us as a sounding board, a couple of things they get really excited by is fundraising. So when they're raising a fund, they'll send me their pitch deck, and I have about 10 or 12 friends, personal friends, who I'll send this across to. And even if they get that one meeting to pitch, they feel very nice about
Of course.
it. So I think that is one thing, the network. So, in case of health tech companies, I introduce them to hospitals or take them to conferences where MQ set up a booth, or some key opinion leaders. They really like those networks. So one is the networks. And second is, something as simple as just putting up their photo with me on Insta account. I mean, they're just so happy. And you should see the kind of messages they send.
Yeah.
So, sometimes it takes very little and that human touch to make them happy. And that's been very fulfilling for me.
Yeah,
But
little
being
goes a
a
long way.
Shark Tank company is an incredible thing. No? I've seen that as soon as it airs, they have it everywhere that I'm a Shark Tank company.
Yeah.
Doors open, meetings get set up. Like, फिर तो मतलब हमने deal दी होती तो और help हो जाता है.
Yeah.
But regardless, I think being a Shark Tank company is nowadays like
Yeah.
you're a tribe.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's on a lot of LinkedIn profiles, you see it, right? They'll have their name, and next to that they'll say Shark Tank,
Shark Tank company.
contestant or Shark
Or a
Tank
Shark-
company. Yeah,
yeah,
because that's
one
Like
of
a badge of honor.
Yeah.
I
yeah.
went to IFC. IFC is a place in Gurgaon where
Yeah.
there's a lot of restaurants. तो वहाँ पे one of
We
the
wouldn't know.
You know. Sorry.
humans of Bombay.
तो वहाँ पे the screen outside was presenting as featured on Shark Tank.
Oh, wow.
Like it is
Yeah.
literally outside the door.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible.
That's
You know what
amazing.
the interesting thing I've seen
Hmm.
is the 6-month window after it airs makes all the difference in terms of magic or what the founder is going to achieve long term.
Yeah.
The really smart, sharp founders use that window to corner distribution and get product market fit.
Yeah.
And they hold on to the spurt that they see after Shark
That's
Tank
true.
airs. You sometimes go up 10x, 5x. So they somewhat stay in the same area even after the
Decline. I mean, the buzz.
The buzz goes down. And that makes the difference in the long term.
Yeah.
And the other founders, they get so carried away with that surge that they don't structurally make changes which will keep them there.
Yeah.
And
To
so-
align with that buzz.
Yeah, and so they see the
Yeah.
4-5x, but then they equally see the same drop after.
Yeah.
few
So
months, right?
if you look at like the hardest to get into right now is quick commerce for most young
Yeah.
brands.
Yeah.
And we've seen that even before the season airs, the smartest founders are able to get the quick commerce companies to understand that they're going to see a spike
Yeah.
in searches. So at least give us some
Some
stores and
Yeah.
they have the inventory ready. And that's led to like a phenomenal. I mean, the founders of Blinkit, Zepto, Swiggy have told us that, the impact that they see on the evenings that the
That the
episode
episode
airs in terms of searches and consumption of those brands.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because once you get in there, you stay there.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So, you were talking about markers and saying that, when you prepare for board meetings, there are certain numbers that, you figure out while preparing for it. I want to talk a little bit about all of your individual businesses. We'll start with you, Ritesh. And what a fantastic turnaround it has been for Oyo. And walk us through a little bit of that journey and what did you do to kind of make that pivot towards profitability?
Look, our company's journey has been a little bit of like 2 half decades, right? The
Yeah.
first 5 years were about growth, relevance, impact, things like those. But those came naturally with significant losses.
Yeah.
COVID was very hard on the travel industry. Probably the hardest for us. Maybe the movie industry would be not movie as in movie industry, movie as in the theatre industry would be the only other one who would be as badly impacted as us, or air industry. But in some way, I feel like every crisis is too precious to be left unused, right? So I thought that there's crisis. Most people were writing obituaries about us in
Yeah.
COVID, saying that travel industry will not see the light of the day on the other side. I thought it was the time for us to, it was a real test of character for us. So put our heads down, focused on doing a few things right, which is a few countries is doing very well for us, like India, Europe, and US. So reduced our presence in China, which was not doing that well for us entering into COVID. Second is focused on our brands, which were doing very well. So our Townhouse brand was doing very well, double down on that. So few of those changes have led to the big transformation over the last few years. Last year, we reported close to 890 crores in EBITDA and 230 crores of PAT.
Yeah.
But I hope that we can compound this in times to come.
Yeah.
But we are still learning. We're still learning. There's a long way to go.
Yeah, amazing turnaround, and I think a huge inspiration for everybody who's watching.
No, I think similarly, I learn from all the Shark Tank
Yeah.
entrepreneurs who are demonstrating incredible turnaround.
Yeah.
One I must say is this company called Roadbase in Bihar. These two young entrepreneurs built out of a little village. They call it Roadbase because in Bihar, roadways ko kai baar roadways pronounce karte hain.
Haan.
And the business is up like manyfold and
Yeah.
continues to grow. So I feel like turnaround stories are everywhere, both Shark Tank companies and sharks,
Yeah.
and everybody's learning together.
Yeah. What about you, Vineeta?
So for us, the last couple of years have really been about building our offline business.
Yeah.
Because in the, for us, unlike Ritesh's category, COVID was a big boom for e-commerce consumption because suddenly people who were in tier 2, tier 3 cities resisting shopping online started also buying online. And over a period of time, we figured that while we have a 70% gross margin in our category, because of the spends on digital marketing, it was harder to build profitability online. So over the last 2 to 3 years, we've built actually 60% of our business is now coming from offline. 45% is general trade. And while we are now the third largest color cosmetics company in India, we feel that the road to the number 1 position will require us to continue doubling down on this offline expansion, which is also a lot more profitable in terms of unit economics for us as compared to online.
Right. So how do you balance that revenue versus profitability?
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's for me also has been a very big learning over the last 2 to 3 years, because you always assume that at a 70% gross margin, it's going to be easy at some point. You turn it off marketing and then you can actually become profitable. But when you turn off marketing, it impacts growth. And I think we are very focused now on making sure that the remaining part of our growth from the third largest to the largest brand in the color cosmetics category comes profitably, even if it takes a bit longer. So yeah, the focus has shifted from gaining market share, which was a large part of our focus for the till about 2021, to now building the business profitably.
Okay. Namita, I'm going to come to you last because I want to then take it to IPO and what the buzz is with that.
Sure.
So before you,
She's
we
the
will go
only
to
public
yeah,
company.
yeah,
in the
exactly.
four of us.
Yeah. So that's why I'll come to you last. Anupam, first of all, why are Shaadi.com numbers such a state secret? We've all been researching, trying to find numbers, revenues.
Oh, you are
things.
dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I'll tell you why. Let me first say, just in broader context standpoint, we currently, because you're asking about how our businesses are evolving, we currently think of ourselves in phase 3 of our evolution. And we've taken quite a long time because we started internet businesses when there was no internet in India.
Correct.
Right? So we had to wait for the internet to come. We're probably one of the most capital efficient companies in the country. We've only raised $12 million into the company in
That's
our
amazing.
lifetime.
That's amazing.
With that money, we've built one of the largest property marketplaces and sold it to News Corp. We built one of India's largest digital ad agencies and sold it to IPG. And now we are building Shaadi.com through accruals and through that same money, by the way.
Wow.
Right. So phase 1 for us was really about finding the opportunities that which markets we can create, because the internet was just taking shape, right? Phase 2 was about getting out of sort of the non-cores, which were, we had built these multiple businesses because the internet itself wasn't growing. So if you can't grow with users, you have to grow with spread. And then phase 3 is really about consolidating and becoming a very large company. And that's what we are designing right now. The reason the numbers are secretive is because it acts as a competitive moat. The guys we compete with are public companies. So we know most of the stuff about them. They know very little about us. Right? And when you're doing really well, and this is very old banya knowledge. This is what we've learned from our forefathers. वो हमेशा कहते थे कि अच्छा टाइम चल रहा है तो बोलो बहुत खराब चल रहा है और बहुत खराब चल रहा है तो बोलो बहुत अच्छा चल रहा है. So I don't know why, but even Sun Tzu has a chapter on this, the art of war. But regardless of that, that's more tactical. We are now in a phase where we are creating a category, right? We have created a category. This didn't exist before we created Shaadi.com. And we take a guess how many success stories a day.
You'd mentioned this number. I hope
it's a couple of thousand, right?
Yeah.
So it's transformational. If you multiply that by 12 and 10 years, the number of million people that have met through Shaadi.com and then had children. And so in some way, we have actually tilted the axis of the world, right?
Yeah.
If you think about it. These are also extremely bottom line accretive businesses. When we grow at this scale, now when we grow 30%, our EBITDA doubles. So the magic is just starting to unfold.
Correct.
You know how we talk about compounding being the seventh wonder of the world?
Yeah.
You don't actually appreciate it until you look at that P&L and it sinks in. And every quarter now when I look at that P&L, it's literally magical.
Wow.
So we're now defining what that means. Does it mean going public? Does it mean getting into new businesses? So we're figuring out the next level because we clearly see that as a brand and as an opportunity is a multi-billion-dollar opportunity.
Yeah.
So what exactly the pathways are, we've got 3-4 experiments going on, and I think it'll become pretty clear very soon.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah.
Namita, I'll come to you, and then I'll also open it up to everybody about the IPO syndrome, which is very all over the internet, very discussed. But how has it been taking the company public, and what is the biggest difference that you see before you went public and after?
I think it was phenomenal for me personally because I went for 115 road shows.
Wow.
That was just massive. I mean, we'd have like marathon 7 to 8 meetings in a day, investor to investor. And these guys have done their homework.
Yeah.
Only in India or internationally?
Everywhere, internationally
150.
as well. 115 road shows in India as well as internationally. And you would think that the questions get repetitive, but these guys do this for a living. So the depth that they have in healthcare and then specifically pharmaceuticals, and not just your company, but like little details about your competitors. You've got to have every number in your head. You don't even have a minute to look at your laptop and rightfully so, because if you don't have it in your head, you're not into the details of your business.
Correct.
So I think that was just phenomenal for me in terms of just the quality of questions and quality of discussions we've had. I loved every minute of it. Post going public, has my life changed? No. And the reason being that, the one fantastic thing about MPure is we had very high standards of governance in terms of the kind of auditors we've had, the board of directors, the ERP, everything that a public company does, we've done. And I think to a large extent, the credit should go to our 2 private equity investors, Blackstone and then Bain, very marquee global investors, which have really, we've operated because of them and as well as because of our value system as the family with very high governance standards. So life hasn't changed post going public. But yes, what is a bit, sometimes a tough balance is a quarter to quarter outlook. And especially pharmaceuticals right now, we're in 70 plus countries. So 55% of our business is global. 45%, which is domestic, is the one that I look into. So while being a family member, you have to know everything and be part of all strategic meetings. The real operations is the 45% of domestic business. And there we're facing some headwinds in the sense that pharma would typically grow at 13 to 14%. It's currently at 8 to 9%. So in addition to making, that growth and doing justice to making the big brands bigger, the 2 more verticals that I'm looking at is one is multinational alliances. So just about 4 months back, we got 500 crores of marquee legacy brands from Sanofi. We also took over 250 of their reps. Integrating that in a company like MKO with 2 different cultures and making those brands work, it was one of the most challenging things, but again, most gratifying things that I've done. And we'll be having more such in-licensing deals, because if the market is not growing, you need another lever to grow. And then the third area that I'm excited about, large part thanks to Shark Tank, is my consumer health, OTC, D2C, nutraceutical business for women's health called Arth and Galect, that I've just launched a couple of months back. And I think there's tremendous growth potential in there, especially coming from a marquee company like MKO that has tremendous vertical integration in form of R&D and manufacturing. So overall, a very exciting business to be in. And I think at 10,000 crores, we're not even 10% of our potential. So you'll see very good things coming our way over the next 3 to 5 years.
Super exciting.
Yeah, very exciting.
So to everybody else, and obviously you as well, there's a lot of chatter online, right? Which is that, companies do go the IPO route and then they start trading at less than what they opened at. And effectively, it's been a disappointment for a lot of people. But that seems like the objective for a lot of companies. I know specifically for you, we've had discussions on going IPO. What are your thoughts on this holistically?
Okay, I start first.
Yeah.
So
we go with the nicest first.
Well, that's nice of you to say, to put me in the spot.
Very nice guy.
So Karishma, look, I think first off, for our company specifically, right? First off, I think you should know that in the public markets, I consider it as your initial reputation offering, not just public offering.
Yeah.
So when you're listing your company, it's critical that you're thoughtful about how you price it, when you go public, what you do in that process in order to make sure that you create value for everyone. So I think any company needs to be highly conscious of it. And while there are some companies which have opened lower, but there are so many companies that have opened much higher.
Yeah.
And I think there's been reasonable value that's been created. I think specifically as it stands for OYO, I'll share 3 things, right? The first is we are a company that's been around for some time. We are an over 10-year-old company. We have substantial capital that we have raised as an enterprise. So we will be a public company someday. I think even though we are a private company today, we behave and operate much like a public company. We do our quarterly earnings. We are rated by S&P, Moody's and Fitch. In fact, they just upgraded us day before yesterday. We also try and make sure that in whatever manner, our earnings that we had projected, we share visibility of results. So for example, just this morning, somebody sent me an email saying that I see your 8 months numbers and the 8 months numbers are looking like they will just meet the target of 1,300 that you had said, 1,300 crores that you had said for the full year. I said, well, that's what we had set as an expectation. But they said, but your history suggests that you always beat. So why is the beat not coming? So the expectations keep rising and your job is to make sure that you set the expectations right and then hopefully do a little bit better than that. So my view is that companies which are mature, even though they are not public, should start behaving like a public company, much like Namita mentioned, right? Having your board, your stakeholders, like ensuring that your governance standards are high regardless. And that's what we've been trying to do. When we go public, we have a timeline in mind and we have a number in mind about what our earning per share should be. Last year, our earning per share was, I think, roughly 34 paise a share. This year, we're expecting, give or take, 80, 85 paise a share. So we have a target of what that EPS should be when we consider public offering. As and when that time comes, we will consider going public.
Okay. Very in true Ritesh style, he has answered my question. What about you guys? Vineeta
I think
first.
all the founders and I have to go first because it's a nicest order.
Yeah.
So all the founders that I've spoken to who've taken their companies public have told me it's like shadi ka laddu khaye wo pachta hai, na khaye wo pachta hai. As companies that have raised capital, I think eventually we will also be taking the company public, and public market multiples are actually for many companies far better than private market multiples.
Yeah.
Especially if you look at brands, most are trading at revenue multiples, if you look at much higher than what the private market valuations are. So I think India is really still in this public market growth phase where more and more people are now using mutual funds and equity investments rather than traditional means like real estate and gold. So next 5 years will be great for most startups to go public. But of course, there's the whole challenge that you're operating quarter se quarter tak, and it has a lot of pressure numbers. So all the long-term investments that you do, ideally you should do it pre-IPO.
Yeah.
So for us also, there are certain longer term bets in terms of new brand introductions. We launched a new brand in partnership with Karina called Quench, which is completely made in Korea. That's seeing, that's gone through its journey of discovering product market fit and now growing to a 100 crore ARR level. We are working on a couple of more new launches, and we feel that it's better to do these strategic investments before taking the company public. So cannot comment on any timelines. Probably is Qatar mein main last hoon, but
Anupam, what about you?
The baddest guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I made no such comment. It was
That's
ऐसे ही
okay.
flow में जा रहे थे,
Self-proclaimed
like this.
I wear it as a badge of honor. No, I think there are two parts to your question, right? One is about companies trading below their IPO price. And then what are our plans as far as IPO is concerned? I think that is going to happen, right? Every wave brings with it opportunistic fundraising, whether it is 2021 for private capital raising or whether it is now the public markets. But if you break through the clutter, what you also see is two amazing things happening. There are a few companies that have gone public that are trading way, way above their IPO prices and that have really demonstrated the value that Indian companies and Indian markets can deliver. To the extent that companies that were Indian in nature but were, overseas are now flipping back to India by paying hundreds of millions in tax. Right? You've seen the news, you know which these companies are, right? So everybody's recognizing the depth of the Indian financial markets finally. The second part is that this is the first time in the history of our country that withdrawal of FII money has no impact on our stock market. Right? Earlier, America sneezed and we caught a cold. But that's not happening anymore because domestic investors are plowing more than what FIIs are withdrawing. Right? So the market stays buoyant. Yes, one can argue it's a little frothy and so on, that'll keep going up and down. So I think these are great enabling circumstances for any company that has the right numbers and has a long-term view to very seriously consider going public. Of course, it comes with a lot of responsibility and accountability, and you must understand that, and you have to obviously go through the motions. But if you are not considering that with good numbers, I think you'd be very foolish. So obviously, we are considering that, and I think the depth of the market is probably here to stay. It's not just a bubble. You might lose some frothiness, and that's fine because, as I said, if you have a long-term view, a little up and down doesn't matter because at the end of the day, you're going to compound, right? At the end of that period. So we'd be foolish not to.
So we're down to the last question, and I have this unique mix. There are 2 female founders, 2 male founders. Let's add context to this debate once and for all. Is it more difficult for women entrepreneurs? Firstly, we're called female entrepreneurs or women entrepreneurs, not just entrepreneurs. So that in itself is an indicator. But is it more difficult? And what are your opinion and what are your thoughts on it? We'll start with the women first. Ladies first.
I think there are stereotypes that you have to deal with, but I am sure men have stereotypes as well. I think at the end of the day, I'm a very strong believer. I'll talk for myself. When I'm judged at MCure by my investors, or I'm judged externally, I'm judged by the numbers. So if I have a sales budget, what growth have I given the company? How much money have I made for my investors? What EBITDA am I giving the company? And am I putting in all the efforts that are needed to make MCure what it needs to be? So I think whether it's a man or a woman, ultimately it's your performance and your numbers that define you. That's my strong belief.
Okay, Vineeta.
I think it is tougher for women, but it's definitely with every year getting significantly easier. And you see that not just for women entrepreneurs, because for them, I think the hardest, where the data is still extremely skewed against women, is access to capital. But also for working women. And I think the switch is happening because of more women coming in decision-making positions. It's still not enough investors. So that's why access to capital is limited. But there are luckily more and more women now in leadership roles, which is why it's getting easier for women. Just to give you an example, like we say that we want performance to be on numbers, but what most performance management systems end up optimizing for is also subtle things like assertiveness, networking, which women are wired to not be the best at, just, social conditioning. So it takes a lot of effort for organizations to build performance management systems that actually don't overemphasize on things like how assertive you are, how much you network, which have been things that have prevented women from breaking the glass ceiling. So I think, long story short, we're still seeing less than 20% of organized workforce participation of women. And for that number to get to 40-45%, we'll need to have a lot more role models and a lot more women in senior leadership positions pulling other women and lifting other women as they climb themselves in.
And what do you guys think? What is your perception of it from the outside, obviously?
Sure, I can go. Look, I think it's definitely harder for women. But I think there are structural issues. I don't know if it is outright discrimination. I think there are fundamental structural issues, and it's a very nuanced subject. I'll try to address it from my perspective. But if you think about our history of organized employment, it's very short, particularly in India. If you look at the funding part that Vineeta just spoke about, only 2% of global women getting funded. Now, structurally, the VC ecosystem was born in the US. So VC ecosystem is built around tech companies. And engineers, women engineers, were a rarity at the time. Even now you're seeing a lot more. But generally speaking, women are not drawn towards engineering. She's an exception who ended up building a brand, which is good. But generally speaking, women are not drawn towards engineering. So you ended up with a full ecosystem of tech bros in the US, in India, Europe doesn't matter, who fund people like them, right? Particularly when you don't find those women engineers. But you are starting to see a very different India when it comes to brands. We spoke about Shark Tank and how 50% of them are women. You think about a lot of D2C companies that are now being built, many of them are helmed by women. If not the main founder, as a co-founder, and many of them as primary founders. So I think that structural change is happening because now you have a new VC ecosystem forming around brand businesses where women representation is much higher, right? So I think that's one part of it. In terms of breaking glass ceilings, actually the problem starts from below. At senior levels, I personally don't see a challenge. If there is performance, I'm not seeing too many people discriminate against women and not allow them to progress right to the board level. The problem is early on. 30% of women drop out when they get married from the workforce. Another 30% drop out when they have a child. So biologically, it becomes a huge issue, right? So you have very few women moving up into the workforce. So I think these are just some issues that will take time to address. And of course, we have a mission to try to bring 10 million women back to employment ourselves as Shaadi.com. But I think you need initiatives like that. You need to give it some time. And I don't think the world or men are against, although it might seem like that. We don't have a secret club against not allowing women to rise. In our company, 50% of workers are women, for example. So I think that's my nuanced, not so clear answer.
Final thoughts.
First off, let's start by saying that why is it important? We are all Indians deeply passionate about our country's success. तो अगर हमारे देश में हमें eventually double-digit trillion की economy बनानी है, तो ये under 20% women participation तो नहीं चलेगा जी. This is like, there is no way India becomes a double-digit trillion. Now, 5 trillion, I think we still get there with the improvements we're making. But for 10, 15 trillion, when you have to be in the, the top club, you have to have very high women participation. So I think in my mind, women entrepreneurs, women engineers, women operators, women execution people, women on the shop floor. Sorry, I pointed towards her because she started her life at the shop floor.
Yeah.
It's needed. There is no other way in which we become that economy. Now, is it structurally harder? There is a natural acknowledgement that it is structurally harder, and it is harder because of multiple reasons, which I think is a very long discussion. But I am an entrepreneur and I consider myself chief solution officer, not just problem. तो solutions की बात करते हैं. देखिए, मेरे हिसाब से सबसे पहला है जो विनीता ने भी बात कही कि small things make the difference. For example, when looking at companies, at Shark Tank, we looked at 45% companies which had women. So the outcome is 50% of those companies are women. तो सिंपल चीज, आप अपनी कंपनी चला रहे हैं, जब आप टैलेंट को देख रहे हैं, आप ये मैंडेट कर दें कि जी हम टैलेंट कम से कम X% हमें वुमेन देखनी है, तो आप मौका तो दीजिए. अगर मौका देंगे, उसके बाद मेरिटोक्रेसी से नहीं आया रिजल्ट तो नहीं आया, बट कम से कम मौका दीजिए. और आप, इफ यू गिव द अपॉर्चुनिटी, it's highly probable the results will actually exceed the candidature that you have. Second thing I also feel is that India is unique in a respect where I see that the engineering attractiveness in India, Anupam is right that generally I think in US and Bay Area, gender engineering is more driven towards men. India mein it is changing very rapidly, like Vineeta and Anupam mentioned. Women in engineering is like unparalleled, the speed of growth we are seeing, like in our own workplace, but also more generally in colleges, university, academia. So that's going to help. Third is role models. I think having people like Vineeta, Karishma, yourself, Namita, when people look at you all, I see it in Shark Tank all the time. Shark Tank, when women come and pitch, they are just enamored by looking at Namita and Vineeta. They say that, these guys have done so well, we follow you on. Like, they've watched about things, like one of Namita's videos from like a year back and said, because one of the companies that joined us, they watched one of your videos from a year back and said, wahan pe Namita ne ye kaha tha. Like, that matters. I think having that kind of role models out there makes a difference. So, long story short, has that been a challenge? Sure. But I think 5 or 10 years later, I believe, much like young entrepreneurship 10 years back was a little bit of exception, not the norm. Today, it's the norm. I think 10 years later, women entrepreneurship will be the norm, hopefully.
Okay, amazing. So we'll close on that note. Thank you so much. And it was so lovely and really excited for season 4,
Yeah,
guys.
I just want to
Excited.
add that thanks to storytellers like you, it's never been a better time to be a woman entrepreneur in India.
Sweet. Thank
And
you.
Karishma, I agree with Vineeta. You're doing a fantastic job.
Thank you.
And, a lot of depth in your stories. And you're one woman who inspires many. So thank you for that.
Thank you. That's so sweet.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you,
hope
guys.
everybody who watches Humans of Bombay then applies on Shark Tank season 5.
Yeah,
All the
yeah,
best.
please. Thank you.
Thank you to
Thank
your
you.
team as
Thank
well.
you. Thank you for being the best community, and we'll see you in the next one.